Hello and welcome to the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff Semon. He is the host. I lost it. I don't have any more lines for you this week,
No host
Shawn.
for the most, no
I'll have to come up with...
Master of the Sith or whatever the hell that was.
It was the Lord of the Sith, the man, the myth. They're hard to come up with.
You need to work it. You have all week.
I should. All right. I will make a commitment from here forward.
To have your
like
intro.
An oath to America and an oath to the Commonwealth, to have my intro ready for the man who we all want to be, who women want to be with, Shawn Dooley, state representative.
My wife is going to be shocked by that one.
She's not included in it?
You'll have to ask her.
Okay. Well, maybe I will. All right. So we are here today. It's election week, Shawn. How is
Thank God.
Yeah, I know. It can't come fast enough. How is your campaign going so far?
Good. I mean, it's working around the clock. We're trying to not miss a trick. You know, we had the debate last week. Went very, very well. I mean, it went better than I could have scripted. So my opponent didn't know any of the issues and kept fumbling, and things he reported in the paper were opposite of what he said in person. And so I was able to just kind of, I'm like, whoa, I'd like to rebut that. And the moderator was great. He's like, nope, go ahead. And I had to be careful to not make people feel sorry for him.
Yeah, you didn't want to beat him up too bad.
Right. So it was, so that was kind of interesting. We've done a ton of media. We've done a ton of digital ads. So far this month, just targeted at my district, I've got put in over 1.3 million. I'm going to be over 1.5 million by election day.
Let's say impressions.
Impressions, yep.
I don't think we're spending $1.3 million on a state rep race. Just want to confuse anybody.
Yes, we are spending 1.3 million
that
pesos.
Absolutely.
On a state rep race, and ton of Facebooks, both ads and just posts, and we've had tremendous support, and we've just had it's very bizarre. We had the early voting in 2018, and I probably had like 3 or 4 people like, hey, I voted for you. I'll let you know I voted for you. I haven't had a day go by since it started, since the real early vote, in-person early voting started, that I haven't gotten 9 or 10 people, showing me, pictures of them there, pictures of them in their ballot.
So there's enthusiasm for you.
So it appears, yeah.
There's some things going on right now. I mean, we're in a heated election year, and I think there is a lot of enthusiasm on both sides to get out there and vote. We're going to see record high voter turnouts, and for the presidential down ballot, everything. Obviously, you're down the ballot from
right.
In a presidential year. You have to run midterm. You have to run presidential year. So it doesn't matter for you. You're still running your race in the same race. But the old saying by Tip O'Neill,
all politics is local.
Correct. Are you finding that as a Republican in Massachusetts? This is the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast. You have principles and ideals that you've stuck by probably your whole life.
Yep.
We'll get into that in a second. But what's the feeling you get from people out there who know you because they see you in their town and they see you, locally working for the issues for the community? Does party come into play too much, or what are you thinking?
I mean, for people who, you got the 10, 20% on either side that are hyper-focused on the party. I mean, and they're going to vote straight ticket every time. There's really nothing you can do with that. I mean, I have some of those, that have peeled away from the Dem side just because I've been able to help them personally, or we have a personal connection, something along those lines. But for the most part, the other side's starting off with 20%.
Right.
And that's just the reality of pretty much every election. It's kind of like when you write your name on the SAT, you get the 200 points or whatever. Automatically. So that being said, where I'm seeing all of my support, where all these people are coming out and everything like that, it's not necessarily what I do on Beacon Hill. It's all about what I do locally. If there's their power outage, I'm out driving around and trying to help people get their power turned back on, and on the phone with Eversource at 3 a.m. Those sort of things matter. Helping someone with their unemployment or an adoption or their their health insurance or just navigate the nonsense that is government. When people can call me and I call them back right away, myself personally, or I'll go over to their house, and those sort of things really resonate. And I think that's the thing that so many of our candidates forget, is that they hyper focus on issues, and it's more about service.
So one of the reasons, we're both Republicans, and I'm a Republican because I believe in that local government governs best. And so the issue, the things you're describing and the reasons why you do what you do are important for exactly the reasons you explained, is that you can make a real-time impact on the people in the district and can help them, as opposed to government that would be necessarily further away from them, or something like down in D.C. or
exactly.
even in Boston or anything like that. Because you're their representative, you can affect an immediate change. Does that, from your political, maybe even ideological standpoint, being a Republican, does that help influence that? Or is it more that it blends with just being a good citizen on those terms?
I think it blends with being a good citizen, but I think it's also who I am at my core. I am a small government guy, and I am a small government guy because I think that's the right way to do it. I think I've personally seen it firsthand that if you want to actually make change, you do it at the local level.
Right.
You're not doing it when you're in the chamber with 160 people, because the other 159 people care about their people. Right. They don't give a damn about my people. If they get to help their people and it also helps my people, bonus.
Yeah.
But if it helps my people and it hurts their people, then they're going to be against it. Yeah. And that's the way it should be. But when you bring it down to the local level, because now you're fighting and you're having this, this pissing contest, this hierarchy where you got Speaker DeLeo, you got the President Pro Tem, you've got the majority leader, you've got the handful of lieutenants up there who have all the juice, and that's the reality. And so now we're letting a handful of people whose best interest is their district, not the state as a whole. That's a secondary best interest, determining who gets the money, who gets the who the laws benefit. All of those sort of things fall secondary to their district because they are representatives, and that's who they're close with. That's who they see on the streets. That's their all politics is local. They know them. That's the person when they're getting out and shoveling out their walk after a October snowstorm.
Right.
That's the neighbor that comes over and is either going to say hi to them or give them shit for not taking care of their town.
Well, what's the feeling and the feedback you're getting from maybe not even your constituents, but including your constituents, and maybe when you're up on the Hill, about the balance of power that we have in the state? Because as Republicans, we're the minority party by a steep margin. We can't block against an override of a veto.
Not even close.
Yeah. And we're trying to claw back seats unsuccessfully, and we need to do a better job at that. But from the people's perspective, and when you're talking to the citizens of the Commonwealth, do they get it? Do they see the imbalance? Do they recognize the advantage of having more of and I say it as an adversarial government, meaning the two parties have enough power where they can have to work in conjunction, or the constituents get really pissed?
No, I think intellectually, the constituents understand there needs to be a balance. I think the people in the state understand that there's this supermajority, and I think that's the reason we traditionally have a Republican governor. Yeah. Is that's how they justify it, and that's how they kind of balance it out. And they're like, all right, we got I think I mentioned it last week. I had a commentator had a great Massachusetts voters love their blue cake with their red candle. And that's where we kind of are. And they don't realize, well, we've got a balance. This party is, in charge of the legislature, and this party is in charge of the executive. And so it's a balance. And the reality is the legislature has all the power if the executive branch doesn't have a veto. And that's where we are now. I mean, when you have an 85% majority, literally, Governor Baker can, veto something before the ink is dry, before he even takes his hand off the paper. we can override that veto.
Right.
And that's the reality. There's that much power in the speaker. And I think people don't realize that. And again, it's kind of a catch-22 because since all politics is local, we'll stay with the Tip O'Neill theme. People know their rep. They don't necessarily know, oh, my reps are Democrat, my reps are Republican. They all think their reps are middle of the road guys. Except for the like the Cambridge folks and the Brookline folks. Yeah. For the most part, I have people all the time who are like, oh yeah, oh my rep's centrist, and I'm like, I know your rep, and he is a cuckoo bird.
Yeah.
And 100% votes for the speaker and votes for all these crazy leftist things. But he shows up the Eagle Scout at Court of Honor. He shows up at the birthdays. He shows up at the bar mitzvahs. He shows up at the ribbon cuttings. And so they know him personally, and he's a nice guy, or she's a nice girl.
It's a lot harder to dislike somebody when you've seen them and met them in person quite a few times.
And so people, when there's 160 people voting on something and then the governor signs it, it's not my bill for the most part. It's not purely targeted at me. And so people are just so hyper-focused on their own lives and trying to survive, especially in a time of COVID. They're trying to homeschool their kids. They're trying to figure out what's going on with their job. They're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. They're not necessarily thinking about, whether we're going to put an additional nickel deposit on NIPS, to prevent litter, down on the Cape. If they thought about it, maybe they'd have an opinion, but they just don't have time. They don't have interest.
They have lives.
And they have lives and other priorities. And we've lost, and with the new media, we've lost the ability to have these discussions and conversations. So it's all this void of Beacon Hill. People don't understand what goes on there. And it's just this thing, and laws happen, and, unless it really affects them. That's right. Like you have a few things. You had the IT tax a few years ago. You had the gas tax.
I have a story about that if we want to get to that.
The IT tax?
Yeah.
But, or the gas tax. Everyone could relate to the gas tax.
Yep.
And that was the reason there was an outcry and everything, that people were like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not fair. That's punishing me. Because it hit them personally. It hit them in a way that they could completely comprehend, as opposed to, this is a something that may or may not ever affect me. It's
no, gas tax is real because it's something we all pay on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So it's tough to get to that point where it has a real effect. The capital gains tax doesn't necessarily affect the wide swath of people, but gas tax, that's real and that's immediate.
Right. And you're not paying your cap gains every single day.
Yeah.
Depending if you have it in your mutual fund, it kind of comes out at the throughout the year, and you're not really paying attention to it. If you're wealthy enough that you've got stock options and things along those lines, then it's a different story. But that's such a small group, and when you're talking about houses and things like that, a lot of people are it's being passed up on the next generation. So you're getting the step up basis anyway. So those sort of things, they're not a day to day. Nothing's coming out of somebody's pocket.
Yeah.
Where they're like, crap, I can't pay for my kid's lunch today because gas went up. I can put $20 in my truck and get back and forth to work. But now I don't have anything left to send my kid to school for lunch.
Where do you think we're lacking as Republicans in the Commonwealth to achieve that balance, or better achieve that balance? Because people across the state recognize it, and they know that we need to get to it if they want to have a better performing government. So talk to me about the balance that people are seeking out in the Commonwealth, because I think there's a real yearning for it, right? You're hearing that from your constituents. What are we as a party lacking that we need to do to move forward the balance that people are looking for?
Well, I think, like I said, is what we've done so far as a party is we talk about these very, very large-scale, grandiose issues. We talk about a lot of national issues, and they're not resonating. They're resonating from a polling standpoint, and what do you think is X or Y? Okay, I'll give you it. But it's not going to motivate me to get out of bed and say, all right, I'm going to go march because of this particular issue, or this really affects me because it's hitting my pocketbook or it's affecting my kid's school. And so what we need to do is really change our focus. We need to go after, the huge chunk of Massachusetts voters that the Democrats have decided to abandon. The entire center, even the center left for that matter, but the entire center and the center right, they've really, really abandoned. And these people aren't overly political. They're old school Yankee.
Yeah.
They're small government. They're independent. They're personal liberty. Stay out of my stuff. Stay away from my money. Let me run my life. Let me raise my kids. Be my safety net. I want, the government needs to take care of the roads. Fill the freaking pothole in front of my house that I've been calling for, the past 7 months on. Those are the things, make sure that my schools are properly funded. Make sure that my teachers have the resources. Make sure that my taxes are not being wasted. I think Massachusetts voters are very generous.
Yeah.
We do not mind helping out those in need. We don't mind sharing the wealth. Rising tide raises all boats. We do not want to see our money, our hard-earned money, squandered and wasted and go to scammers and wasteful politicians and all these other nonsensical things that we spend our money on, and all these little special projects and, bridges to nowhere, those sort of things. Well, and I think it really, if you can make that argument that we're going to bring the power back to the people, we're going to put the money back in your pocket, we're going to give more local control, we're not going to have this giant bloated central government that just it's never ending.
It's wasteful and inefficient and all the things that we know it to be.
And nothing has proven that more than COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, think of the buildings that we have in downtown Boston that haven't had anyone in them in 7 months.
Right.
Think of the employees that are, not necessarily working full time, and we haven't missed a beat. Think about, all of those resources, the parking and the electricity and the taxes and all these things that we're giving to make other people rich with our tax dollars. We're paying top dollar to be, have space in, the floor below the UMass Club with the beautiful, 12-foot ceilings with all that are all glass that are overlooking the Charles and the Boston Harbor. Why the hell are government agencies having that kind of space? And now, where my kid is suffering at school and not getting additional education and extra help and additional resources. We don't have a foreign language program at our school because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
But we're spending, $300 a square foot. So some bureaucrats that are already getting paid by us, including benefits and pension, can have this phenomenal view. Now we found that, guess what? They can work from home and they're more efficient.
So, question for you: you're getting to a good point of why I'm a Republican, and I think more people should, if they knew what we stood for and what we're trying to accomplish, would vote Republican. And that is simply that we're not allowed. We don't have a big enough platform and a loud enough voice to make the kind of reforms that you're talking about. The Republican Party, I'd say in Massachusetts, we're constantly playing defense against what crazy progressive bills are coming down the road that want to, the IT tax,
right?
Medicare for all of Massachusetts, or
rent control,
all these
everything,
all these crazy. Raising the gas tax to astronomical levels, CTI, all these things. We're playing defense most of the time, and we never get a chance to play offense to offer the kind of reforms that we can in a legislative sense. The governor's made some good reforms for the T and in the MBTA control book, but
I don't know if you'll get me to say. agree with you on the MBTA and the control board.
With what we're able to do.
Because they like just wasted $50 million on the Foxborough pilot, which today, the last train of the Foxborough pilot leaves South Station in an hour.
Well, it was a pilot. So, yes, pilot programs are there to prove a point.
Yep. For $50 million. I guarantee you, for the amount of people that wrote it, I could have taken every single person in a limousine to Boston, and I'd put an additional $40 million in the taxpayer's pocket.
But the point is, Shawn Dooley, if we had more seats in the legislature, we would be able to even, stop that from even happening to begin with.
Right.
We would be able to put forward a counter argument to accomplish school reform, pension reform, all of the things, public sector union reform, all of the things that we know that are actually hurting the citizens of this Commonwealth, but we're constantly playing defense. So,
I think you just hit the nail on the head right now. Is we would be able to put forth counter proposals. Right now, the Republican Party, we do not put forth in the caucus in the House or the Senate. We're not putting forth counter proposals.
Correct.
We're not. We have the transportation bond bill. We'll throw in some amendments, but we're not saying, no, this is BS. This is $100 million of wasteful spending. Here is what we're trying to accomplish. Our proposal does it for $50 million, and it also does it better. And same with the budget. We should be sitting down, and instead of just taking the Democrats' budget and saying, okay, thanks for writing it for us, we're going to go and try to tweak it, and we're not going to. We should be putting forth real budgets. We should be putting forth real messages and say, all right, here's our proposal. And this is why our proposal is better. And it's not going to be a slam dunk. It's not going to even get accepted. But from a talking point, we will be able to get on the Sunday morning television shows, and we'll be able to get on NPR. And they're going to say, well, here's the budget, and be like, this is why our budget's better.
Well, but this is something, two important things. One, people in politics are constantly looking to use the sports analogy, to hit a home run or to throw the knockout punch.
Right.
And politics really isn't about that. Campaigning isn't like that. Legislating isn't like that. It is a long, slow grind, a slog that you have to come to a consensus to get something done. But we don't have any seat at the table to get our proposals in. Like you said, maybe some amendments, maybe things like that. But the party, what we have the potential to do, because we have better ideas. Right. And my personal story on this and why I got involved in politics is because I'm willing to sit down with any progressive, any Democrat, put forth my idea, listen to their idea, and say, here's why mine's better. You tell me why yours is better. But we don't even get to that point.
Right. And there's the crux of the issue. I don't care how good your idea is. If you don't get your idea challenged, and it doesn't get vetted, and it doesn't get an additional point of view, you never know if it's great. But you could have the greatest idea in the world, and if we were able to actually sit down and have a discussion where our voice is valued, and we'd be like, whoa, do you know if you change it from blue ink to red ink, it'll save us $72,512? Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, I don't care what color ink it is. Great. We've made the bill better just by having the conversation.
Yeah.
Or why don't you change that line from this to this? That'll help this other group of people. It takes care of this unintended consequence. But right now, we don't have that seat at the table. We have, we're 100%, running defense. And if we get to the point where we're, our magic number in the House is 54 to be able to sustain a veto, even if we're getting like at 48, 49, 50, I all the time have Democrats come up to me and they're like, hey, I loved your idea. I would have voted for you, but I'm not going to go vote against the speaker and then get kicked in the you-know-what.
Yeah.
Hurt my district, and it's all for nothing.
So theoretically, we wouldn't even have to necessarily, it would be good if we get 54.
But if we can
get close, we'd have more power,
right.
because in a seat where a vulnerable rep on the D side, who it's a conservative district or a middle of the road district, where they're going to be genuinely upset and affected by it, we could potentially flip that to block or to sustain the veto.
Right, exactly. And I know Democrats who are way more aligned.
Are you going to get in trouble for this?
I won't name any names, but they're way more aligned with the Republican Party than they are with the Democratic Party,
right.
Especially the new ultra-left progressive socialist Democratic Party where it's moving toward. But why would they give it up? They will lose money, they'll lose power, they will lose revenue for their district if they give it up and get nothing out of it.
Yeah.
There's a certain level of courage, convictions, and there's also a certain level of stupidity, where, and we have to find that balance. And if we can make a good argument, I think we could flip a couple of these people because, they truly are more aligned with us and they would love to do it, but they're, people justify these things to themselves. Well, I'll vote with the speaker on this one because in the end I get X, Y, and Z for my district. And, and he's got an 85% majority, so he's going to win no matter what anyways. So if I don't go along with him, my district gets less, I get less, my family gets less. And I mean, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying that's the reality of human nature. I think people can, they start off with very noble intentions, and they're going to come in with, fire and brimstone, and they've been there a couple of years and they're, it's their job and they're trying to, they're going to go home to their husband or wife and be like, hey, honey, I'm going to, stand on my convictions. It's never going to pass.
And then their constituents get screwed.
Our constituents are going to get screwed. And by the way, my pay is going to get cut by $32,000 because the speaker is going to take away my stipend. Yeah. And I'm also going to lose my staff. So I'm going to go from having a staff of 6 to a staff of 1. And so I'm going to be working a lot more. And their spouse is going to be like, what?
Don't do that.
No, you're not doing that. And,
you're getting real insight into the operations of a state legislature probably across the country.
Right. And I'm be honest with you, I'm blessed that I don't have that problem. One, I'm a Republican. So, my job is somewhat to throw the punches and fight against the speaker. And I've got nothing to lose anyways. My base salary is $62,500. Yeah. That's the bottom it can go. Yeah. And that's all I have. I have one aide and I'm, in a cubby with, walls that go halfway up to the ceiling. I guess I could go into a closet in the basement, but besides that, I don't have to worry about that. And I also have a very supportive wife who, makes all of our household income. So it makes it a lot easier.
So what frustrates me is we've got such potential as a party here in Massachusetts. We literally have, we have a dedicated group of activists,
right,
that can get behind what we're trying to accomplish.
Like they did with the gas tax.
Yep. We have a fantastic, elected reps, not as many as we want, obviously, in the House and the Senate. And we have literally the most popular politician in the country in our governor, who is, for the conservatives out there like myself, I look at it and I go, like you alluded to earlier, the Constitution of the Commonwealth is the template for actually our national constitution.
Right.
Okay. So a bicameral legislature, and the legislature runs the Commonwealth. It runs the state. And if we want to enact a more conservative agenda, more Republican agenda, we need to capture more House seats, more Senate seats, in order to get that done, as the Constitution would dictate. So, a lot of finger pointing goes on at the corner office, and I think sometimes unfairly because they're limited in what they can do with what the legislature has. But I think we have a lot of potential with like new media, especially with
this,
like this, but also the opportunity to take our message directly to the voters and potential activists, get our registration numbers up, get to a point where we can actually be a viable force. There's potential there. I see, and what I can't stand, even not only here, but anytime I see it in life, is when we see a situation where somebody's not living up to the potential that they can get to.
Well, and let's face it, I'm probably more guilty of this than most, of bashing the governor for, taking a lot more liberal stance than I think he needs to. But I also understand pragmatically that it is, he's dealing with an 85% majority.
Yeah.
And there's no upside for him except for his personal beliefs and him being a small government guy, which, I still have to believe he's still a Republican. At his core, he has to be a small government guy. If we had more to offer, if we had more power, if we start winning seats, if we start putting forth counterbalances and go to the media and go to the press and have a voice, then he's going to have to listen to us more. And we're going to be able to have a larger seat at the table. But the Democrats are going to not necessarily fear us, but I want to be respected.
But ignore us.
Yeah.
Because right now
right now we're ignored.
We're ignored.
But the governor can actually ignore us as well.
Yeah.
Because, as much as he might like us and we're friends and everything like that, he, in order to get anything passed, he has to have the Democrats on board. He doesn't have to have the Republicans on board. If we get to the point where we can sustain a veto, now he doesn't have to get the Democrats on board. Now he has to say, all right, you know what? Now he has to listen to us a little bit too. But, I think the reason, I have a relationship with him and he's probably not thrilled with it often.
I can attest to that.
Is because I have a voice, because I have, my little, between this podcast and my nightly blog, I have a couple 100,000 people that, are reading my stuff and things like that. So now I have a voice, and now I can be heard, and he can't just ignore me because I'm not just a nobody rep.
So talk to me about why you're a Republican, because I can speak about why I have in the past on some of my other stuff where I've done my other podcast. But talk to me about why have you always been a Republican?
I was going to say, when I registered to vote when I was 18, I was a Republican. I was a Navy brat. My mom was a Democrat. My dad was a Republican.
Okay.
So we came from a mixed marriage. Although my mother has moved considerably to the right, and my mother is further right than my father is. As
a lot of baby booming Democrats have. Yeah.
So she is no longer. She'd probably be really horrified if she heard me say that she was ever a Democrat. But she's from Massachusetts. She's a Irish Catholic from Massachusetts. Yeah, kind of went with she was a Kennedy Democrat. And so, I started off, my life at, when I turned 18, went to, VMI, Virginia Military Institute, and my very first vote was an absentee ballot for Reagan, which was very cool. So, I grew up in the Reagan age. Yes.
I'm a little jealous because I didn't get to vote for Reagan.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so that's the problem with being old. And it's one of these things where, I guess it was kind of easy to be a Republican then. I mean, it was, at the time I believed in a strong military. I mean, I was, Naval ROTC, Marine option, so I mean, right. so that probably guided a lot of my thought process. We were, still in the Cold War. It was, and we'd just come out of, we were seeing prosperity, and we were seeing freedom. We were seeing a dramatic change from when I was younger under Carter. So you had all of this. It was a new dawn. It was a new era in America. I mean, where we had American pride.
Morning in America.
It really was. I mean, and people were proud to be Americans. And because prior to that, my dad was career Navy, and so I remember being as a kid being on naval bases, and my dad's ship would pull in, and he'd have to he was an officer, so he'd have to change out of his uniform, just get down to a t-shirt, and people were driving off the base, and people were spitting at our cars and throwing things at our cars and things. So it was a really weird time. And then we had Reagan. All of a sudden, it became this. It was cool to be an American again, and it was some national pride, and it was we were hate to use the steal the Trump term, but he made America great again. Right. I mean, he really did. We went from being a whole lot of people ashamed of our country we had a lot of national pride.
But that's a real appeal, because it's a genuine thing,
right?
Because I can think of that. When I've said this to Democrats and to Republicans, if a Democrat ran on a Republican message, they would clean our clock left and right, up and down, over and over and over again. And I think what frustrates me is so much that as Republicans, we have a good message. We are on the right side of it. We stink at getting it out. We're underperforming. We're not living up to our potential, because I know if we got to the voters, to the people, and people are starting to wake up a little bit, slowly but surely, but we can really advance that process as a party and as people who would be very active in it, to get that Republican message to people that would be receptive to it. So, I mean, I have all the things that I'm interested in, but as a Republican, as a rep, as a legislator, as somebody who's active in it, I mean, what do you want? What do you want to tell people when they're like, well, yeah, why are you a Republican? Talk to me about it.
Right. I mean, I think did I move too far?
You moved
into
a
the
little
frame?
too far into the frame. You got
Right,
to.
I'll stay there. Is that a little better? Okay.
You look very handsome. Right
yeah,
now.
yeah. Thank you. My wife's going to be like, "What are those two idiots doing?" You're spot on. We have a good message. The problem is we overthink it. We overemphasize it. We have a 27-page dissertation, and they have a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
And, and the reality is you can be like, all right, we have to make it simple. We have to make it easy to digest, and we have to make it personal. Democrats are phenomenal about addressing emotion. We address intellect. Emotion's easy. That's an initial thing. You see something, you're automatically shocked, you're horrified, you're happy, whatever it is. It's an instantaneous thing. An intellectual argument, you have to read and you have to think about it, and you have to let it meander around in your brain a little bit, and you have to talk to other people and work it out and argue and debate and all of those things, which make for a better outcome, but it's harder to convey the messaging. And that's where we've really, really dropped the ball. Why I'm a Republican is, like I said, I consider myself a constitutionalist conservative or an intellectual conservative from the standpoint of it's not any one thing. It's about what framed our country. It's about personal liberty, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Yeah. Well, you said before, smaller government.
The government shouldn't be coming in and telling me what makes me happy. They shouldn't be telling me how to raise my kids. They shouldn't tell me what color to paint my house. They shouldn't tell me what color Christmas lights I have on the outside of my house. Any of those sort of things, as long as I'm not hurting somebody else, then we should be able to be free and do that. And most importantly is the American dream. For the history of our country, and we're at that precipice now, where for the first time in our history, the next generation is going to be better than the last. And we're at the point now, where is it? We're worried. Is it going? Are we continuing to go forward? That was always the dream. You would have these people would come here. My grandfather came from Ireland, and my years before that, my other families took the wagon train out to Iowa, and the goal was took the wagon train out to Iowa to get a plot of land that's 10 by 10, 100-acre plot. My great-great-grandfather died on the way, and so was my grandmother with 8 kids, and it was for a better life, as crazy as that sounds. And they did it, and they had the opportunity, and no one was going to tell them what to do. And they started farming the land, and they grew, and they prospered, and they made a good life. And it was their land, and it was their freedom, and it was them deciding that they were going to do it. They weren't going to be sharecroppers back in Ireland,
right,
with some landlord telling them that this is what you're going to grow and this is what you're going to eat. And if we run out of food, too bad, you're going to be the one that starves. Those sort of things are real. And that's what really happens. And that's what makes America so great, is that you can be rags to riches, not even in generations, in your own lifetime.
In your own lifetime. And
the Republican Party celebrates that. That is the socialism, the overtaxation, the overburdening.
Yeah.
All of those things are the antithesis of the American dream.
Let's be very clear for the audience at home, and I'll say it flat out. Shawn, feel free to disagree with me. There is only one political party in this country, in this state, that subscribes to the mindset and the attitude that you just outlined before, and that's the Republican Party.
Right.
Because what we see from the other side is, you're right, the antithesis of that. More government intervention in your life, government dependence for a variety of things, for healthcare, for housing, for eventually for food in a lot of circumstances. And it's this perverse control over your life that I think more people have to understand that is what we're talking about. And, we talked about this before in the terms of, we don't get a chance to get our counter proposal out there or our better idea out there because we're constantly playing defense. And to credit to the Democrats, because the Democrats are very good at playing offense and pushing, and that's why they call them progressives, because they're never stopping. They will never stop. It's not going to be,
we just want this thing.
They fixed healthcare. They fixed healthcare 10 years ago. They fixed healthcare 10 years ago. Now they have to go and fix it again this year. And now they're talking about how woeful it is and how awful it is. And everybody's supposed to just memory hole the idea of it. But so without getting, we'll put those specific issues aside, but we have such potential here, in terms of right now, literally what we're doing on this podcast, to be able to take the time, because I think there is a yearning and a thirst for people out there who, for the folks who just want the bumper sticker, maybe we have to get better at that bumper sticker slogan. But for the people who want to maybe take an extra 45 minutes to understand a complex issue and see both sides of it, there was never an opportunity for that before. And we really have you're getting a 10-second soundbite on the media or on the local news or a 6-minute segment where they cover the topic. But now we have real potential.
Exactly. So the problem right now has been in Massachusetts is the Democrats have framed the narrative. And like you said, we've been on the defensive. And so that's what we're trying to do here is be like, whoa. I appreciate what you're saying. Let me tell you what I'm thinking. And let me tell you why my idea is better. And let me tell you why, I know you think you're the smartest man in the room, and we're all just little dumb little bunnies, and you're doing this to protect us. But we want to be free. We want to have our personal liberty. We fought. You think about Massachusetts. We're a bunch of farmers that fought the king and won. That's still our inherent spirit.
If you really think about it, that's a profound, risky thing to do. What they did a few hundred years ago.
Big, giant, specially made pants.
That is a risk.
These guys were, and men and women were. God, I hope I would have that bravery. But the reality is, right now, if we let the media just completely say, all right, Republicans are racist. Bullshit. No, we're not. And this is why we're not. Because, to be honest with you, we're the party of liberty. Yeah, we're the party of Lincoln. Yep, we're the party of the equal rights and the Civil Rights Act in the 60s.
Yep, we are.
Which the media seems to forget. But more importantly, from today, we are the party of opportunity. And it's opportunity for all. And the war on poverty has been a miserable failure. Our cities aren't doing well. There's people that are super, super rich that are doing well in the city, but as a whole, the population haven't after all of these progressive programs and everything like that with, where they've given housing and everything like that, they haven't succeeded. There's been a case here and there, but as a whole, they haven't. The Republican Party should be putting forth ideas on this is how we're going to succeed for all people. It's unfortunately seems to be my catchphrase, but John F. Kennedy's a rising tide raises all boats. It's true. What's good for the entire country is good for all the people in the country. Nobody should be specialized. No one should be put out, all right, you're a special class or anything like that. Let's make sure we all rise up and let's give everybody the opportunity and celebrate that opportunity instead of having big government do it.
True equality.
Let's true equality. And let's for those people who need the help, let's make sure we help them. So
surprisingly, this conversation has gone really quick, and I wanted to squeeze one more thing in with you. And, you're a sitting state legislator, excuse me.
I'm not that fat. COVID, I've put on I've put on the COVID-19. So I'm working on it.
But talk to me a little bit about why you ran initially and why you continue to run, because you have a unique perspective, working up on Beacon Hill, talking to your constituents on a regular basis, being in this for a few years now.
Right.
I mean, when did you first run? Why did you run? Why do you continue to run? Because it's a profound thing that you're doing that can impact the lives of a lot of people.
Yeah. Now I was going to say, it's funny because I never wanted to run. I was always an operative. I was always behind the scenes. I managed a lot of campaigns. I worked on a lot of campaigns. I liked doing, I liked being the person behind the man or the woman. And that was cool, and it was safe. But you get to you get to do a lot of really, really interesting things for a lot of different people, and kind of push and pull and have some power, but not being in the limelight. And so when Dan Winslow got the offer that he couldn't refuse, I had managed his campaigns. He came to me and said, he goes, I really want you to do this, and I'm like, I don't know.
What year was that?
It was in 2013.
Okay.
And I'm like, why? He goes, I think you'd be really good at it. He goes, because you have an ability to connect with people. He goes, the reason you're such a good campaign manager is that you see what people want, and you're able to understand, and you're able to relate, and you're incredibly genuine and Dan had an opinion about my candor that probably Charlie doesn't share. Dan used to always say, he goes, I love having you around because you put me in my place. And when I say crazy things, he goes, my entire life I've had people that will be like, oh, that's a great idea. And you're like, that is a stupid idea. And it doesn't work because this and this. And we'll challenge, we'll fight, and we'll argue. He goes, but, he goes, you can't surround yourself with yes men.
You need the team of rivals. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And again, back to the legislature, makes all of our legislation better if we have two equal groups that respect each other and are able to debate and come up with a better solution that's somewhere in the middle that helps everybody. That's one of the things we're missing in Massachusetts.
But you were hesitant to get there.
So I was having to. So he basically, I shouldn't say he talked me into it, but he goes, I think you'd be really good. This is why. And so I'm like, all right, what the heck? I'll put my hat in the ring. I'd always been involved in politics. I started on my, I was a co-campaign manager of, Guy Hunt back in, 1987 or 1986. First Republican to get elected in the state of Alabama since Reconstruction. I'd worked with Senator Jeremiah Denton, who wrote the book When Hell Was in Session. He was a prisoner of war, and he was a U.S. senator who came in with Reagan in '80, and unfortunately we lost that campaign in '86. But since then, I've always been involved in campaigns, and so I'm like, all right, well, I know how to run a campaign. I like people. I like doing it. I'll finish out his term, and if I enjoy it, great. If not, and when I got up there, I really loved it. And I have two stories, and I'm a teary guy. That both happened in my first year.
Well, I'll interrupt you if you get too teary.
Okay.
For image purposes here.
It's who I am. I'm an emotional guy. Right after I got elected, there was a gentleman, World War II vet, 90 years old, living in a little house. And this is in January of 2014. Hadn't been sworn in yet. And he was behind on his propane payment. And that's how he heated his house and how he cooked and everything. And he called me up. And he goes, I know you don't know me and you just got elected. Can you help me? They came and took my propane. I'm like, well, they can't do that because it's a fuel source. Unbeknownst to me, propane is not a regulated utility. So therefore, they could take him.
Wow.
The guy was like $500. He'd been with the company for 20 years. A new conglomerate came and bought the company. There was some dispute over the bill. It was like $500.
Okay.
They took the tanks, shut them off. It's January 15th or something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah. Old, 100-year-old house, 90-year-old guy.
Yeah.
And can't cook, can't heat, anything like that. And I'm like, holy crap. This is a real problem.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, you can come stay with us. He goes, I don't want to stay with anyone else. I don't want pity. I'll stay here. If I die, I die. And I'm like, holy crap. It just got real. Right. I'm not even sworn in yet.
Right.
And so I'm like, all right, give me the name of the company. So I call up the company and they're like, finally got to the manager and I found out they'd just been bought by a conglomerate out in Ohio. And he's like, well, he was behind on the bill and we've given him this. And I'm like, so just so you know, I'm a politician and there's nothing I like better than press. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to call every single news station. Don't worry, I will get your name spelt correctly. And we're going to be out there in 20-degree temperature. It's going down to, the teens, teens or, single digits tonight. We're going to be out there with this World War II vet. And don't worry, I'm going to get you tons of press.
Mm.
Don't worry about it. And if, God forbid, that guy dies, it'll probably make national news for you. He's like, well, you can't be doing this. And I'm like, why not? You don't owe me anything. I don't owe you anything. Mm. I'm just going to tell the truth. I'll tell him that she owes $500 and that you're willing to kill an old man for $500. And he's like, well, what can I do? And I'm like, he has another propane tank there. All you had to do was the connector that you guys took with you. He goes, well, that costs money. I'm like, how much? It's like $35. I'm like, I'll pay the frickin' $35.
Yeah.
Really? You're going to kill someone over $35 now? And hang up. About 45 minutes later, this guy called up, tears. He goes, I don't know what you did, but they just showed up, hooked me back up, came in, started my pilot light. The guys couldn't be nicer because the guys that were doing it felt bad.
No, the guys doing it are always they're down.
Yeah,
they're just doing what they're asked to do.
They felt
yeah.
horrible that they were having to do it. So they were happy to do it, and they took them up. And I'm like, oh my God, I can actually make real change.
And you get things done.
Then I got up to Beacon Hill and I realized up there I'm not making as much change. And so the next thing that it was probably about a year and a half later, had a local family, great guy. There was a horrible situation. Parents, I won't get into it. But no longer, 4 orphans. No one able to take them. Kids, age, 2 to 8. And he's like, all right, I'll take them all. yeah, and you're just like, holy shit. You know, you hear the story. I'm like, wow. He heard about this family. He's like, called up. I'll take them all. Big government, Massachusetts. Our foster care program, who has some great people, have some not great people, come out. They measure his house. Based on your square footage, you can only have 2. Like they're commodities. So he's like, all right, well, I'll take them. I'll get the rest. I'll put it on an addition. So goes out, gets a loan, hires a company. They start building. Call back over. They're like, when it's finished, we'll come measure again. Meanwhile, the other 2 kids are, all 4 of them literally are decompensated. They've both just lost both of their parents. All 4 of them lost both their parents.
Yeah.
One of them's, 1.5. All sorts of, their world is turned upside down.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Tragic.
And so the guy calls me up and he's like, is there anything you can do? I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. Yeah, there's definitely something we can do. So I call over HHS and talk to the ombudsman, and they're like, oh yeah. Well, let's see what we can do. 2-3 days later, they're like, yep, nope. Rule 7242B says we need this many square feet, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's the most asinine. These other kids nobody wants them. They're bounced. The other 2 are in 2 different foster homes. This guy wants all 4 brothers and sisters. Are you kidding me? Nope, sorry, nothing you can do. Hang up. And I'm like, huh. So I called up Mary Lou Sutters, who I'd met at a conference a couple days before. And I'm like, you have 5 minutes. And so I tell her the story, and she goes, this is right up my alley. She goes, I'm a former social worker. She goes, I can't believe this happened, but let me see if there's something to do. Just go ahead. Fast forward an hour and a half. I'm at some Chamber of Commerce thing, and Charlie Baker's speaking. And I guess I'm a rep, I'm at his table. This is before he knew I was a pain in the ass. And so I'm sitting next to him. And so I tell him the story. And Charlie is, one of the things I will say I really like about Charlie is he's like me, he gets emotional.
Yeah.
So he gets a little choked up, and he goes, I'm calling Mary Lou. And I'm like, so he dials her, like at the table while we're waiting for the, rubber chicken to show up. And I'm like, oh, don't worry, I've already called her. And he looks over and he smiles. He's like, probably can't hurt if I call her too, right? And I'm like, yeah, yes, Mr. Governor.
Yep.
And 2 weeks later, all 4 kids were together, which ended up being like 3 days before Christmas.
Mm.
And then 6 months later, they all got adopted by this family. And I got invited, and I got to be one of the guest of honors at the adoption ceremony, and got to meet them and hug the kid, and actually and I had been checking in on them anyways, but it was and it's just like, and so when people they're like, don't you get frustrated being a Republican in Massachusetts that you can't get much done, you're not only able to get the crumbs? I'm like, you know what? 1, I think we keep the Democrats honest. 2, I think if we get some more people, we'll really be able to make some change. But 3, those are the things that keep me going.
Yeah.
Those are the things that from a personal day-to-day standpoint, small government, affecting change, one person at a time, keeps me going. And that's the reason I do the job, is because those are 2 of my favorite stories, especially this year during COVID. I have 100 of them. And I've been able to really help a lot of people. I've gotten to do some really cool things. I've got to meet some amazing people. I get to know really neat people in the community. I get to be involved with things that as a normal citizen, I wouldn't get to be involved in. And, and that's cool, but it's also very rewarding. I mean, it's not, you're not doing it for the money. You're not doing it for the fame.
Right.
If I could get more Republicans elected on Beacon Hill, where we could push the governor a little bit more, we We could be taken a little more seriously by the Democratic Party because they were a little worried about us coming after their seats. And so you better not freaking kick us in the you-know-whats every single time. Let's be partners. Why don't you respect us and listen to us and compromise with us so we can make the state better as a whole, as opposed to being, we're the 85% giant gorilla, you do what we say. We get to that point, then I'm going to enjoy being on Beacon Hill as well.
Yeah.
Because we can really make change. And that's where it will be a better Commonwealth. I don't care. I've said this before. I probably shouldn't say it, but if the Republicans had an 85% majority, it would be just as bad. Because I think absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Right? Isn't that the old saying? Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely.
You can see it in other states for sure.
Right. You know, where you need the balance. You need to have both sides. And you need to have debate. You need to have conversation. You need to have the ability to reason and not just say, well, I wrote this and I'm king and that's how we're going to do it. 250 years ago, we started fighting against a king. The fact that so many of us just roll over for one now really bothers me. And I think most people in Massachusetts, if they knew that it was this bad, they would be shocked. But we're in this 30-second soundbite mentality. We're fed things by the media. There is no alternative for them to listen to of just straight conversation. I get in trouble all the time because you ask me what I'm thinking or what my opinion is, I'm giving it to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to give you a spin. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. A lot of times, sometimes I'll be like, do you really want to know what I think? And I think that maybe is part of the problem that the Republican Party has had, is it's done do you really want to know what I think? And then the Democrats, I shouldn't even say the Democrats, the media, who has a bias and who has an agenda.
You can say the Democrats. It's the one and the same.
But I know, I was going to say, you know what? I don't think so, because I think the Democrats have a different agenda. The media is purely money.
Well, that'll be our next topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
But because it's just pandering to the least common denominator.
Yeah.
And if we're able to get the word out, if we're able to get good people in, we're able to show a contrast, if we're able to put forth proposals, if we're able to show the world what makes Massachusetts such a special place, and bring more technology here and bring more business here and have it succeed and have more people rise up, that's a powerful message. We can make the change if we have the plan. We can't just be responding to somebody else's plan. We need to take the bull by the horns and we need to say, all right, this is where we want to go. This is how we're going to get there. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be overnight. The Republican Party had a supermajority in 1858 up until the 30s. Then it was back and forth for a couple of years, and we lost the power in 1955, and we've been on a downward slide ever since. We're below 10%.
Yeah.
Think about this. We were the majority party before Lincoln. We were the majority party in Massachusetts. We had the speakership in 1858. And we've gone this far, where we're below 20% in the House. What are we at? 10% in the Senate?
Oh no, below that.
No. We have 4. We have 4 out of 40, so it's 10%.
Okay. All right.
It's easy
I
math.
thought we had 3.
It's easee math.
I thought we had 3.
4.
I did think we
Tar,
had 3.
Fat Man, O'Connor, Tran.
Yeah.
See, I can count to 4. I was a finance guy. Under Weld, we had a veto-proof majority in the Senate
Right.
not that long ago, and now we're at 10%. Why? Is our messaging that bad? Has the population changed that much? I don't think so. I think everyone thinks of Massachusetts as being the super liberal place. We're liberal on some things. We still have the Protestant work ethic. We still have the Yankee sensibility and the lack of wanting to waste. And we need to embrace that, and we need to go after that. And I think with a plan, with a focus, with us working together, not this every man for themselves BS, not attacking each other because you're not as pure of a conservative as I am, and Charlie's a rhino and all this sort of stuff, and I know I've hit him, as well. But in the end, we have to say, all right, is the Commonwealth going to be better off with a strong Republican Party, or do we keep going the way we're going and then there isn't a Republican Party? We need a two-party system. We need a counter to the far left. Because as the Democrats abandon the middle, they're not abandoning the middle to go to the right. They're embracing socialism. They're abandoning capitalism. They're abandoning personal liberty. They're abandoning personal rights. They're abandoning. That's just so great. We got freaking town meeting, the purest form of small government. We've moved so far, so fast. If we do not step up and stop it now and come up with a plan and come up with a resolve, then we're going to be doomed. And I guess that's why I'm a Republican state representative. Long answer,
Well,
but
I can tell you, Shawn, I'll be right there in the trenches with you, trying to make that happen.
That's why you're here on a Friday night at 10:15.
Well, I don't think we could have ended it any better than that. Shawn Dooley, state representative of which district?
The 9th Norfolk.
9th?
The best damn district in the Commonwealth.
Of course it is. This is the Commonwealth Conservative Podcast. I am Jeff Semon. He is Shawn Dooley. We want to thank you all for checking us out here. And it's real important. If you like this and you want to tell your friends about it, just click share. Don't even click like. Click share. Send it to folks.
Share helps.
Share is better. Share is better. But we're going to start getting... I'm looking forward to the next episodes because I'll tell you, we are going to start taking it to the opposition, and we are going to get that message of what our better plans are for the Commonwealth, for the country, for everybody.
Yep, and we have a YouTube channel now. Make sure you like it and subscribe to it.
Subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Facebook, and we will be putting it out there through all the socials. And I think that's it, Shawn.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.